Hey listeners, are you thinking about starting your own podcast? Well, do I have the app for you? It's called Anchor. Anchor will get you out on Google Podcast, Breaker, Radio Public, Spotify, and many others. Not only that, Anchor will find you sponsorship so you can get paid. That again is Anchor.fm, Anchor.fm. Welcome to Abe's from Porch Talk. Thank you for listening to my podcast. It means so much to me. Those of you who are not financially able to support this podcast, I understand tremendously. And just you listening is a good support right there. That's one of the biggest supports I can get from you is listening to this podcast. There is a way if you want to financially support this podcast. Just look for the support button on the podcast app that you use, and it will direct you to where you need to go. And then Anchor that I use to go through will do the rest. I hate that word, and I don't even know why I just said the word Anyways, I appreciate all you listeners. Without you, I could not made it this far. Give me a rating. Let me know what you think about my episodes. Sometimes when you leave comments, it helps people like me to improve where I made my mistake. For I may not see my mistakes, but you guys can. And right now, I do hold a 5-star rating. Somebody gave me a 5-star. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that once again. I'm going to try to start doing a lot of advertisement about the podcast and YouTube videos. Maybe make up flyers and put around my neighborhood if I can. Hopefully that will get me more listeners. So I'm trying to reach that 1,000 subscribers for the podcast and YouTube videos. And it would help me out so much if you guys can help me find the 1,000 subscribers. And, and if you don't want to send money and support this podcast, I truly understand because, I did an episode before, and it was a while back in that episode that I prefer you not to send money to this podcast. All I really want you to do is try to help me get 1,000 subscribers. I'm working hard to those 1,000. I have 1,000 listeners now, but that don't count unless I have 1,000 subscribers where I can do a lot more. Even on YouTube, I need that as well. And if you want to really support this podcast, subscribe and send to your family and friends and tell them to please subscribe because it will help me out tremendously. So that's another way you can support. When you support somebody, it doesn't always have to be about money. It's just listening to what somebody's doing. And that's how you can support people. So let's move on. For tonight's episode, I'm going to be doing the 3rd commandment tonight. I hope you guys are ready. And the 3rd commandment is, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Oh boy. Here we go with this one, right folks? How many people's taken the name of the Lord in vain? How many times do you hear somebody say the GD word from the time they wake up till the time they go to bed? I tell you what, there were people around me back over the summer. I was invited to a party, and people were saying this GD word like crazy, and out of all the people that was there was only one person that kept telling me how such a good Christian person they were, and that they loved God, and they listened to gospel music, and they prayed, and all these people saying the GD word over and over, and I made a comment. I said, ooh, I hate that word. Or I said, I don't like that word. And I got some smart aleck answers back on that one. So I hung around about 5 or 10 more minutes and then I left. I just felt like I needed to get out of there because it was too much going on. So a couple of weeks later, I told the person that claimed to be a Christian stuff, I said, you should have stopped that. And they gave me a bunch of excuses. And now, the week before, they just said they'd been baptized in the Holy Spirit, but yet they were drinking and they were allowing this to go on. Now, you do the math. You tell me how that's supposed to be. And this is a 10 commandment now. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. So, this is what parents are doing to their children today. They're telling them it's okay to do these things and then go to church and pray and sing gospel music, and depending on what type of church you go to, whether you scream to the top of your lungs or you sit there like a knot on a log staring off into space like you're stoned or something. So if you, whatever type, you need to teach your children, you can't be saying God's name in vain. Now, but people are teaching this. Parents don't care how they raise their children anymore. Parents are even teaching their children cuss words. I've seen this with my own eyes before. I've watched parents say, oh, say this word, and laugh about them saying this. Wouldn't correct them, but they was teaching them to say these words. Now, this is disturbing. But yet, they're like, oh, well, I'm saved. I can go to heaven because I'm saved. No, it does not work that way. I said last night's episode and last night's podcast, I said that, trying to find the words here, Jesus said you are to obey the commandments. When his disciples asked him how to know you are saved, you receive Christ into your heart and life, and then you obey the Father's 10 commandments. That's what Jesus said. That's how you tell someone is saved. We all have broken the 10 commandments to a certain extent. Now, but when you're saying God's name in vain, but you have no respect for the person that does not like it, and you want to get hateful with them and start talking bad about them, you yourself have walked on dangerous grounds. And if you're claiming to be a Christian yourself and don't take care of the situation around you when people's doing it, you have disrespected God, and you have just walked up on dangerous territory and you don't even know it. You don't even care. You think you're all right because you believe in this once saved, always saved, but it's not true. A lot of people hearing this podcast will disagree with what I'm saying right now on that, but it's not true. It's sad that people think they can say God's name in vain and get by with it and still go to heaven, and it's breaking the 10 commandments. We know not to say that. We know not to be doing stuff like this. We, as children of God, are to bring correction. It says in the Bible, those who are wise will receive correction, but those who are not wise will not receive correction. So when I threw that correction out to that friend of mine at that party that was allowing that to go on, 2 weeks later, I told them not to invite me back to anything they do again if they couldn't respect something like that. And I didn't care what other words they used. I did not care what they did because it was their property. But when I asked for the one simple thing, not to say the GD in front of me, and they all got mad at me, that's on them. But that's fine. But I told them not to ever invite me again. And I will not do anything for this person or any of them ever again. I said that was it. That was the stronghold. So I had to put my foot down on that situation. And the thing of it is, we've got to watch the words. Now, I don't like all the other language either, but God just asked us not to take his name in vain. We act like that is so hard. I've seen people cut their fingers with a knife, and the first thing out of their mouth is the GD word. They couldn't say any other words. It had to be the GD straight out of their mouth. I'll tell you. I'll tell you this story here. And if one of my friends that has joined me on this podcast, one night we was hanging out and he said the GD in front of me. And before I thought, I done hauled off and I punched him. And I mean, I punched him good. And we were going down the road and he slipped up and said it. And I looked at him and I said, I have no problem of grabbing the hold of that steering wheel and flipping this car with us both in it. I'll take myself out in the process with you saying that word. I do not like that word. And they know, and I will too. And you don't want to be a passenger in my car, because I don't care if I'm running 55 miles per hour down the road. You say that word, I'm just going to reach over and unlock your door and unbuckle you and push you on out and just keep on going. That's how serious I am about that word. I don't like it. Now, there's no sense when you hurt yourself, if you smash your finger or you cut your finger, you're out working and building a building and you hit your hand with a nail or whatever and you say the GD word, the first thing out of your mouth, you are wrong. You are wrong for saying those words all way around. There's no sense in it to begin with. Now, God did not ask us any words in the commandment say not to say all these other cuss words. He just asked us plainly. Well, he didn't really ask. He told not to say his name in vain. How many children today do you hear saying God's name in vain and the parents do not discipline them for it? How many people do you see walking around cussing out in these retailers? And it'd be a Sunday. Say Sunday after people left church. And those of you who's worked in restaurants and retails, you know what I'm talking about. These people come in, they're all dressed up in their Sunday best, as you call it. And you'll be on the aisle, or you at the register, and they don't like something that rung up the right way. And what's the first thing those people will say to you? They'll cuss you out and they'll say the GD word to you in a heartbeat, and you're standing there like, now did you just leave church? You just left church and now what's up with this? There are preachers that will say the GD word and that shouldn't even be saying it. That's a messed up ordeal right there. But yet, you want to judge a whole world by hate. You want to look at everybody else and find fault with someone else, with your neighbor or your other family that you don't want to have nothing to do with anymore. But yet, at the same time, you cannot live by the 10 Commandments your own self. And those are the main things we're supposed to go by in our life as we live, is the 10 Commandments. Last night I told you in the podcast that I have stuff in my home pertaining to the kingdom of heaven and stuff that we shouldn't have. But hey, you got to know I broke the commandments too, so I'm not perfect. But we all got to learn to work together. Now, people working on vehicles. There are several mechanics out here. I've been to mechanic shops. And they'll be working on a car and they can't get the part on right, or they lost something with the part. Something that they're working on with the vehicle goes wrong. And they get mad and angry with it. And they'll start saying to GD this, GD that, GD this starter, GD that alternator. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. If you're that upset, you need to put that down for a while and walk away until you can get calmed down from it. But if you are one of those who wants to cuss, there are other cuss words you can say besides the GD word. Everybody needs to start working on that one word to clean that act up, for it is a commandment. But then you want to run to church on Sunday morning. That's like you going to a honky-tonk and then going out here Sunday morning going to church, and you got drunk on Friday and Saturday night, if you made it back home safely. We've got to be careful here. Why is it when we get hurt or frustrated, that's got to be the first thing out of our mouth? People get into it with one another. People that starts arguing and fussing with each other because they done got on one another's nerves, and the first thing out of somebody's mouth, I don't give a GD about this or that stuff. That is wrong. You're not supposed to say things like that. Why don't you just say, I don't give a flying flip. I don't care. I do not care about a whole situation like that. Say stuff like that. I don't care about this one person you keep bringing up over here. Leave God's name out of your argument. Don't bring it up. I'm not trying to tell you I support people cussing with other words, but I'm just saying if you are going to cuss and you're one of those type of people that cusses, you just need to leave God's name out. Leave it completely on out the door there. The only time you should be bringing God's name up is when you're in prayer. And you're praying and you're calling up on His name. Do you not realize the danger you're in breaking that commandment? Do you not realize the only time you call up the name of God is through prayer? Can we not go back in a time to teach our children about not saying God's name in vain? And here's what gets me. I've run into this a lot. A lot of people tell me, oh, I'm not religious. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. These are commandments that were spoken to Moses from God. And these were commandments that we is suspected to live by. What's so hard? There's only 10 of them. We work in corporations. We got so many rules and regulations on our jobs that we have to go by what corporate wants and what they say. And they got more commandments on their jobs, as you want to call it, than God asked us to do in the 10. They have hundreds, and something goes wrong, they have the right to terminate you from your job because you didn't do what they said. They've got so many rules and regulations that they can back their own selves up if you try to take them to court. And then you got the state that comes in, oh, the law in this state says they can terminate this person because we're an at-will state. So they can always fall back up on the law and make the law on their side, which is highly, highly wrong. That's why I did a podcast about no corporate bailouts. And there should not be, because God spoke to me in my spirit that no one should be bailing out these corporations. They get billions of dollars a year. They can pay millions in commercials. They can do all these things that they want and run His children's life. But yet when it comes down to someone getting hurt or needing to keep their job, they will let you go, and they've got all these rules and regulations and the law on their side that backs them up. And they can win every time, go to court. And you know you're a little man cannot fight the big man. If we would do this one commandment and not say the GD word anymore and get this straightened up in our lives, we might see a better time and a difference. Doesn't matter if you are religious or not. It's called a respect line right there. At least have enough respect for God if you don't for your family members or your neighbors. Maybe we wouldn't have a virus like we do today if we wouldn't going around saying God's name in vain. And teaching our children all these things, it's okay to do it. You're saved, it's fine. If you say it, you're old enough now. This is so wrong. Get your act together. So, what's the purpose of me doing the 10 Commandments? Let me tell you the reason why I'm doing these 10 Commandments. It's because I'm trying to bring each commandment for the next 10 days of this podcast. I'm trying to break each one down to get through to people so you can think about what I'm saying here to you, what each commandment is, to think about it, process it. I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied again. Process each one to really think. If we would go back and start living by the 10 Commandments, we would be in a better place. Oh, there's a lot more coming. And I would love for you guys to stay tuned to this and pass this along. Because I'm trying to get deep into these 10 Commandments to today's life, what is happening. And I'm trying not to get too far ahead and say too much. That's one reason why I've got these long pauses, because some of the stuff is going to go along with the other commandments as well, and it's all going to come back together. Like our judgment and condemnation, Jesus told us not to do, sorry. We're not to judge or condemn, or we will be judged and condemned while we do others. Well, there is a commandment that says, thou shalt not make false accusations. So, or false witness, should I say. Let me put it that way, false witness, which is the same thing as accusations. We need to learn how all this can go together. The 10 Commandments, it was written, all 10 goes to the way people are living their lives today, the good and the bad. And what I see on the news going on every single day, and how there's so many people panicking and getting told this and told that, rumors flying, rumors doing this, and it's like, well, wait a minute, where's the people at that's supposed to live by the 10 Commandments? Especially those of you who claim to be true Christians of God. Says you cannot live in no sin, but apparently you can. That's why you should repent daily, it says. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm just trying to go by the way I've heard people judged for so many years. I've said in a spirit-filled church, I know what it's like. I know how they look up on people. I know what I hear a lot of times. And that's why I'm going back to these 10 Commandments. Like, now, you're not supposed to do this according to this 10 Commandment. You're not. Is it so hard to understand? We teach our children how to cuss. We say the GD word in front of our children. And then we punish them for repeating what we had said. But why should you punish them for what you said? Clean your own mouth up, and then your child wouldn't have to. Don't punish your child, punish yourself. You explained to them it was wrong what they done, and you explained to them that they shouldn't repeat what you had said, and you should learn not to say that. You should say, well, I'm going to punish myself too. Since I punished you, I'm going to punish myself. These are things we need to work on. Stop saying the GD word. Be more respectful. Thank you for listening to Abe's Front Porch Talk. I hope you enjoyed tonight's podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Check out my YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Share with your family and friends. Thank you so much.